aniguna tusmaysto qayrkay halkuu tegay u tabaabulshayste aniguna tusmaysto qayrkay halkuu tegay u tabaabulshayste.
This is a tribute to our sister Hodan Nalayeh, Alayah Rahmeen. It's a beautiful day. It's almost 2 weeks to the day of her passing. So I've decided to make a short video and share a short story of how I came to know Hodan Nalayeh. It was back in 2013 when one fateful day I was sitting at my desk looking at the computer when I received a Facebook friendship request. It says Hodan Nalayeh. I knew that name right away, Nalayeh. My mother being Nalayeh Ahmed, I clicked right away and I could see Hodan's face. Right away I acknowledged, I knew who she was, but that's before she was famous. I knew the family. She sends me a note right away and she says, my name is Hodan Nalayeh. My sister Deqa came across your story about 6 months ago on NPR and sent it to me and said, check this story out. So she said, after listening to your story, I said to myself, wow, if she can do it, I can do it. To give you a little backstory, back in 2010, I was invited by the Mod Radio Hour to tell my story on Mod Radio program in New York. And that story became very, very popular. So PRX Radio Hour decided that they will use this story for 1 year. Every Saturday, it would be on the air. I always knew that this story aired when I get a friendship request from somewhere or a new Twitter follower. Obviously, it's the story of my life. I talk about growing up in Somalia, my dreams and visions for the future, things like that. It's called My Sister's Keeper. I know some of you have seen it already. So Hodan tells me, because of that story, I've decided to leave my job in Los Angeles, move back to Canada, and pursue my passion of storytelling. So she said, thank you so much for inspiring me. It was wonderful to hear these words from another sister. So I told her how proud I was of her as well, and good on her for following her dreams and that she could do it. And a couple of months later, of course, the video started rolling. Her and I became friends. She would call me for guidance and for advices and things like that. There has been times when she was attacked viciously by other tribes and clans, because as you know, in our culture, when you criticize someone, you criticize the whole clan or the whole tribe. It's the famous Somali story, to make a long story short. So I was always there to guide her and to talk to her and console her in any way that I can. Back in 2014, my best friend invited me to come to Canada. Her and I were going to take a road trip, and I told Hodan that I would be coming to Toronto. She invited me to come and have breakfast with her. I said, well, why don't you come and we can meet in a restaurant? She said, no. You're coming to my home for a Somali breakfast. So I went to meet her in her beautiful townhome. And guess what? She had this amazing ancelo lahoh, and anyone who knows me knows how much I love my lahoh. This beautifully made lahoh with muqmat and a long cup of shah adais, Somali tea. I indulge myself. I had about maybe 5 or 6 pieces. Once in a while when I get my ancelo, I gotta I eat it up. So we started talking, and she asked me, why am I still single? Why haven't I got married again? And I said to her, I remember saying to her, well, I don't know. I don't know if a Somali brother is in the cards for me anymore. I just feel like our brothers are not very truthful, and I don't know. And I also added, and also being a big talker, Somali woman who is always traveling and giving speeches and talks, and no sane brother wants to be with someone like that. In our culture, it's like duryama, And I said, what about you? And she said, I can't imagine being with anyone else than with a Somali. Somalinimo was ingrained in her DNA, in her bones. I have never known someone more Somali. Part of it, I'm thinking maybe it's because, being Dulbahante, Reraptiga, always trying to keep all the sides together. She was contagious. She was inspiring. Every time you step out of the Somalinimo, it was easy for Hodan to pull you back to it. She reminds me of one of those songs that every time when I give up on Somalinimo and on Somali love, I would listen to a Somali song, and it brings me back head over heels all over again. That was Hodan. She had a sense of drive, urgency. She wanted to do everything she wanted to do, change the world as quickly and as urgently as possible. Her smile was just refreshing. She could be intimidating at times because she was such a force, Then again, 2015, I went to visit Canada. Her and I got together. It was so funny. I was hoping that we would sit down and we would have a cup of tea and we would chat. But here was Hodan, chasing the sun, always trying to capture the perfect picture, She could be sending a text, email, talking to you at the same time. The most multitask person I have ever come across. I keep saying, sit down, let's talk. That was the last time I saw her. I wrote a book. She did an interview with me. I wrote this short graphic novel that's about allegory of justice, and kind of an inspiring little book. And she said, hey, you should go to Mogadishu. The Somali Book Fair is taking place in Mogadishu. You would love it. And I remember saying to her, Mogadishu? I'm not going to Mogadishu. Al-Shabaab and I have a history. There's no way that I would ever go to Mogadishu. And she said to me, oh, don't be cynical. Somalia has changed. Everything is perfect. It's so beautiful. You would love it. Don't be a dream killer. Which kind of made me upset a little bit. And I said to her, Hodan, you don't know the whole story. There's a lot you don't know. I know you know what's best for Somalia. I know you love Somalinimo. Many of us do. But you have to be careful at the same time. And then I moved to Seattle, and just as soon as I moved to Seattle, she called me and she asked me if I wanted to do a corresponding work for her from Minneapolis. And I said, hey, I moved to Seattle. I appreciate the opportunity, but thank you so much. When I learned that she moved to Somalia, the first thing that came to my mind was, subhanallah, I hope she will be okay. I hope she will be okay. Allah Hodaneh, I said to myself, you are so driven, you are so ambitious. I hope you don't jeopardize your safety. I prayed for her. And then I learned that she's in Kismayo, and I was kind of relieved because Kismayo has been safe for a while. And then last week my mother calls me, and she's always the person who updates me about Somalia and what's going on. And she tells me there was an explosion in Kismayo and a lot of people died. And the first thing that came to my mind was Hodan, and I said, oh my God, I hope she's okay. I hope she's okay. And I said to myself, she's so famous. We would have known if something happened to her. 15 minutes later, I was in the car driving my daughter to daycare, and my mother calls me and she said, Hodan Nalayeh. As soon as she said Hodan Nalayeh, I hit the brakes and I said, she died. Did she? My mother, quiet on the other side, said, yes. It was almost as if I knew. And of course, looking back, I realized the reason that everything was such an urgency, the reason that she was so driven, it was almost as if Allah sent His angels to guide her, to make things happen in such a short time, so that she can touch as many lives, uplift and inspire so many in such a short time, because she was chosen to do everything she could in that period of time and head home for good. You know, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, because what gives me comfort is the fact that she has done almost everything she wanted to do, or at least a lot of what she wanted to do. Obviously, she wanted to do a lot more. But the fact that she fell in love one last time, that she found her soulmate, you know, another Nalayeh Ahmed, another Las Anod guy, someone who was as driven as she was, as charismatic as she was, and that they lived such a vividly, and then left this world together at the same time. That gives me a sense of comfort, because I can't imagine one of them being left behind. So as a storyteller, when I think about Hodan now, I'm very visual, obviously. I imagine after passing the test of Nakir and Mukir, I think, or Nakir and Nakir, the angels, the questioning angels, and the qabri transforms into this beautiful, beautiful palace for her. She would sit up, step out, and would see this heavenly, heavenly, beautiful horizon. And she would see Jama coming towards her, wearing all white. They would run towards each other, embrace one another, hold hands, and fly away, roaming around Jannah. That's the picture, the vision that I have. I can't say we were very, very close. We were not. We were, you know, a hail from the distance. But I've always wished well for her. And I know she did the same for me and for all Somalis. So I want to remind you one more thing. Let's be able to debate and have a conversation and talk and even criticize one another. But please, let's refrain the notion that if we criticize each other, it means we don't like each other or each other's tribe, or we personally despise one another. It means that we are human, that we have different way of seeing things sometimes. But it's possible that we still like and even love each other and wish so much good for one another. So she said I inspired her, but she also inspired me, because as a filmmaker, it's hard to find money for the projects that you care about and you want to make. But she inspired me to not give up and to be able to tell the stories that I care about on social media. I don't think I would have done it had she not inspired me. Had I not looked at her and say, wow, if she's doing it, I can do it. So we inspired each other. So I will remember her as someone who was courageous, ambitious, inspiring, and someone who was just such a Somali in every aspect of her life. Even in speaking perfect English, she was more Somali than anyone I have ever known.